Armand, we're here to talk about a very special movie, The Color Purple. I'm just kidding. We're here to talk about The Color Purple remake, the adaptation of the Broadway musical.
I was going to say
Um,
which okay,
we
which
we
color purple? Okay.
well, we're going to talk about both of them because I cheated on this one because I got a screener to watch The Color Purple, so I watched it at home. And about three quarters of the way through the film, I got really confused because so much was going on that I don't remember from the Steven Spielberg classic that I went and I started watching them both side by side. I had the digital copy of the original and then the screener copy of the new version. So I'd constantly pause and go back and see, okay, this is different, this is different. I know you're not supposed to do that, but it was driving me crazy. And sure enough, this new version, it's a musical, it's tonally very different in terms of the characters. It's extremely different. Um, I I don't know why a lot of people seem to love this movie. I couldn't stand it. And aside from one musical number, which I thought was kind of good, I feel like this new version for a new generation, as what they're advertising it as, people just go back and watch the original and not feel that if they've watched this one, they know what The Color Purple is about, because this is not it.
Right. Yes. Uh they're being bamboozled, as Spike Lee would say.
Very much so. So you saw this movie a while ago, and I know you've got some pretty not so great thoughts on it, and your piece just came out recently in the National Review. So sum up. I mean, we talked about the original Color Purple a few years ago, along with D.W. Griffith's Orphans of the Storm, which they make for great companion pieces. So, as someone who really respects the original Spielberg version, what are your thoughts on this new take, which was directed by uh, Blitz Bazawule?
Well, I would say that the 1985 Spielberg version, based on Alice Walker's 1982 novel, and but it's an adaptation of Walker's novel that is also a creation of Steven Spielberg, who is a an American filmmaker from that generation of filmmakers, also known as movie brats, or as I like to call them, the American Renaissance generation. That includes Francis Coppola, Martin Scorsese, Brian De Palma. So the '85 version is an adaptation made by someone who was film savvy, made by a young filmmaker who had an interest, a young white filmmaker who had an interest in making a movie based on a popular novel by a black novelist, and also making a movie not about white people, but about the book's subject, which is a young black girl at the beginning living in the south of the United States at the beginning of the 20th century. Spielberg had an interest in making a movie that was different from any he had done before. Uh, one reason being that it's a movie about Black Americans, another being that it was uh, his first dramatic film based on history and real life without any sort of fantasy as in previous Spielberg films.
Right.
So it was a challenge for Spielberg, and a challenge that he met, a great challenge for Spielberg that he met with, I think, enormous success, and that enormous success was proved by the film's popularity. Popular, I think, because it was a new genre for Spielberg. It's kind of a woman's picture, to use that old Hollywood term for movies about the experiences of women that female moviegoers could respond to with good and strong emotion. And the film succeeded in that way. It also succeeded in tackling some of Alice Walker's social issues, such as domestic violence and the efforts of Black American women to find their own identity. So Spielberg is doing a lot in The Color Purple, and he succeeded with a lot in The Color Purple. What we have now in this new version, well, I should say also in the version, Spielberg several Black actors to the world who had not been seen in movies before, such as the comedian Whoopi Goldberg, who he cast in the lead role of Celie, Celie being the young girl who is abused and raped by her father, gives birth to two children who are taken away from her, and spends her life in servitude to a vicious man who goes by the name Mister. And eventually she discovers herself through the friendships of a more courageous Black woman named Sophia, who is played by Oprah Winfrey. And then she also discovers her personal life, by a relationship with a Black female blues singer named Shug Avery, played by Margaret Avery, the actress named Margaret Avery. These three characterizations were very vivid in the Spielberg version. Each of those actresses were nominated for Academy Awards, which in 1985 was a rare occasion, but it happened on this occasion because those performances and those characterizations were so vivid, so effective, so well done. So now, all these years later, 2023, that once new actress named Oprah Winfrey became known as a television talk show host. She became the first female, certainly the first Black female billionaire in the world. She became a kind of cultural guru, and she produced this new version of The Color Purple. This new version of The Color Purple was based on a Broadway musical adaptation that Oprah Winfrey produced. I think it was 2004, I believe, and then there was a second production around 2013, I believe, that she also produced. But Oprah Winfrey, being the cultural guru that she is, thinks differently from Steven Spielberg. She wasn't trying to make a movie with any artistic drive, with any artistic inspiration. Instead, she wanted to do what she does on her talk show, which is promote her own personal politics. That annoying phrase, dishonest phrase that she uses, called a film that expressed her truth. And so that's what we have here. We have Oprah Winfrey expressing her truth in a new version of The Color Purple that goes against everything that was successful in the original 1985 Steven Spielberg version. By going against it, I mean it's a musical version. Songs are added to the story, but also most significantly in this production of Oprah Winfrey's, a Black screenwriter and a Black director are added to the production. The difference this makes is that neither screenwriter nor director are equal to Steven Spielberg's talent. So we have a film that is made by Black employees of Oprah Winfrey's, but Black employees who are not up to the task. So what we have is an adaptation of a film that I think can be called a popular classic. An adaptation has neither popular qualities or even artistic qualities. It's just it's a political gesture, a political statement that I think fails on every level.
Well, let me just, I guess, ask, what do you make of the political statement? What do you think that Winfrey and this new cast and crew are trying to get across?
Well, to explain that, we have to explain a little bit about Oprah Winfrey. And it's that Oprah Winfrey, I called her a kind of cultural guru, but she's also her own kind of narcissist and feminist, who likes to articulate her grudge against men. And so even though the idea of domestic violence was certainly part of the story that Alice Walker was telling in her original novel, certainly part of the drama that Spielberg depicts in the 1985 version, I think there's a term I like to use that people don't use enough. It's called a misandry, which is a hatred of men, kind of the opposite of the more popular misogyny, which is a hatred of women. I think Oprah Winfrey, throughout her career, has expressed her own kind of misandry, her own kind of distrust, skepticism, and hatred of men. And I think that comes out in this Color Purple more than it did in Spielberg, which deals with how men can mistreat women, but also how women are capable of forgiveness, how men can be capable of redemption. when the redemption and forgiveness happens at the end of this new version, it's very weak, not convincing at all. But what is convincing in the movie is the idea that women need to defy men. I said at the beginning of my national review on the movie that this Oprah Winfrey version is mostly expressed by a song called "Hell No." The song "Hell No" is a song that's sung by the character Sophia, which is the role that the kind of courageous and bodacious woman role that Oprah Winfrey played in 1985, that now is played by an actress named Danielle Brooks. And Danielle Brooks's Sophia begins the song "Hell No," and "Hell No" I think is the real theme of this movie. Whereas the beautiful thing about Spielberg's 1985 version, I think if you had to pick one theme out of it, it would be a two-word phrase that Oprah Winfrey Seeley says towards the end of the Spielberg film, where she says, "A family." The Spielberg movie is about family. It's about people coming together. It's about reunion. It's about forgiveness. It's about redemption. It's about love. It's about family. And I think this new version is about something else. This new version is about saying hell no to men.
I can definitely see that, and it's strange because I think the difference is very fine between the two movies because both films hit identical beats. You look at Danny Glover playing Mister in the original, and oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the actor's name now. I'm going to cheat again. Coleman Domingo plays Mister in the
Coleman
new
Domingo
version.
plays Mr. here. Coleman, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's because this new version is a musical, but all of the performances seem bigger, writ large. Not quite comical, but not as dramatic and grounded as what Spielberg was going for. And I think in that you lose a lot of the human drama and the conflict of what the entire point of this story is supposed to get across. It calls to mind, could they make a Glory musical? Could they make a Schindler's List musical? I mean, there's not a whole lot to be happy and cheery and high stepping about in this story about brutality and rape and historical post slavery American conditions, but somehow they do it, and the whole thing just seems very off to me. Now we can get into, I guess, at the very end of the film, I think, is when it really drives home the misandrist points that Oprah and whoever might be trying to get across. But yeah, like there's a lot of buffoonery and a lot of the guys in this movie are just they're so weak that I find it hard to believe that they were at all intimidating. Whereas I think the weakness of the male characters in the original version comes out gradually. They're cracks in a very tough kind of facade. Whereas here they're just clowns all the way through.
Well, you use the phrase writ large. I would use the term exaggerated. Exaggerated because the characters have not been credibly reconceived. Instead, I think the characters are treated almost like caricatures. It's almost as if Oprah Winfrey and Bazawule, the director, it's almost as if they don't believe in the story they're telling, because what they do believe in is just getting across these misandrist points, these feminist struggle points, more than getting across characterization. And so you wind up with characters who are overacted, overperformed, never convincing. Added to that, you have the complication of songs, a story that, as the Spielberg version proved, didn't need any singing other than Shug Avery at the juke joint and Shug Avery in her father's church. You didn't need any kind of song to express the reality of the characters, rather than their inner emotions. And so that difference means that we have a new version of The Color Purple that is full of exaggeration, full of caricature, and is never, ever quite believable, quite credible. And I think that's the essence as to why this version fails. It fails as a story about human struggle, about the human condition, but it also fails as a musical because frankly, the songs are not very good. And on top of that, the kinds of dancing and choreography that we have on screen that should express inner emotion express nothing except the kind of Broadway exertion, a kind of Broadway folly of people who want to sing and show off their singing and dancing skills, even though the songs and the music are not very good, even though the choreography is, frankly, I think, terrible. I say terrible in specific reference to that scene where Celie is walking past a line of Black prisoners dressed in black and white stripes, and they're wielding sledgehammers, but they're not working on a chain gang as memorably was depicted in the Spielberg film. Instead, they've got their sledgehammers and they're dancing with the sledgehammers and they're pounding dirt, they're pounding sand, as if no one connected with this movie ever thought about exactly what the singing and dancing was about. Ridiculous, frankly.
But it is fitting because, you know, halfway through this movie, I wanted to tell it to go pound sand.
Right.
But so there, I'm glad that you brought up that the kind of the production design of this, because again, as I was flipping back and forth between the 85 version and the new version, it occurs to me, like, let's look at the juke joint, Harpo's place that he opens up on the swamp. In the 85 version, I could tell that they had built this set and it looked like they were trying to be historically accurate to the time. But it also looked like a place where people would go and hang out and watch live music and gamble and all that. In the 2023 version, it looks like a giant set. Everything is a bit too clean. Even the grittiness and the dirt looks clean, if that makes any sense. The spaciousness, the place looked like a giant ballroom rather than this, you know, rather sizable, not a shack, but an establishment that you would see built on a swamp for people to come in and hang out on a Friday night. I just didn't buy any of it. And I guess there's a difference between going to watch a Broadway musical and sitting down to watch a film. I understand this is an adaptation of the musical, but I almost feel like you need to retool it to make it speak the language of film if you're going to bother at all, which I don't think they needed to, because the original Color Purple, you've got it. It doesn't need music, as you mentioned, but it also has that authenticity, that lived in feeling that there's none of that in this movie. Everything just feels false, particularly towards the end.
Right. Oddly enough, I think I read somewhere that the budget for this film was $100 million, if that's correct. But whatever, it cost more than a dime. Oddly enough, a lot of money seems to have been spent on this movie, but spent by people who didn't know what they were doing, who didn't know how to design a set that could be believable, uh, didn't know how to choreograph dances that could make sense in terms of expressing the character's inner emotions, didn't know how to write songs that were also that also articulated uh, passionate feelings. It's a movie made very ineptly, as I said before, and I think what we've got here is a film made by people who don't understand the conventions of movie musicals, but they also don't know how to be faithful to the ideas in Alice Walker's novel, let alone having the capacity to match Spielberg's filmmaking artistry from 1985. I want to say that there's another issue that's apparent in the new version of The Color Purple, and it's the kind of thing that we normally would not talk about. Broadway theater has, in a few recent years, become a very politicized institution where ideas about race and gender are foremost, and artistry and creativity come second. I guess maybe I can get this point across just by talking about theater, about Broadway theater now being in its post-Hamilton phase. The media acceptance and the media worship and celebration of Hamilton, of the way that racial politics have altered the way contemporary Broadway theater works. And the two Oprah Winfrey Broadway productions of The Color Purple are a part of that. So, uh, gender politics and race politics are foremost in this new film version, and the human experience is not. And I think that's probably the simplest way to say why this new movie version doesn't work. It's a political act, but it's not successful as a story, as a drama, as a as a show about the human condition. And that's because of the politicization that has ruined Broadway and is, if I may say, currently threatening American culture as we live through it.
I would not disagree. One of the things that struck me towards the end of this film, because this movie takes place over the course of about 47 years, and so
Mhm.
our Celie character is probably, by the time the movie is over, she's probably close to 60, if not in her 60s. Um,
Mhm.
Fantasia Barrino, who plays Celie through most of the picture, and also Taraji P Henson, who plays Shug. None of the female leads in this movie age the way that they did in the Spielberg version. By the time we see Whoopi Goldberg at the end of Spielberg's 1985 film, she looks like she's shrunk. I mean, she's got the gray hair and the glasses. She's got a bit of old age makeup applied to her, but she looks like she's been through a lifetime of suffering. At the end of this, eh, Fantasia Barrino and Taraji P Henson look like they've done the opening performance of a Broadway show, playing women who are in their
Right.
40s, but they're about 2 decades off. There doesn't Everything in here seems geared towards a performance and not an exploration of character, which is, it's not upsetting. It's strange, because especially a movie that is shorter than the original Color Purple feels like it's about twice as long, I think, because of the addition of those very interruptive musical numbers. But at the end of it, I don't feel like I'm watching people who've lived a life, especially with the bastardization of the way they resolve all three of these fine, I think, female characters, at least in terms of the Spielberg version. Um, let's see. We've got Shug, whose father is the town preacher. In the original Spielberg film, there's this wonderful sequence where Shug leads the entire population of the juke joint. They're singing in the swamp, and right across the way is the church, and their father is leading a sermon, and the choir master is they're doing gospel, and that ends up being these dueling songs that literally converge. The swamp jukebox crowd marches into the church comes out to meet them, and they're both kind of they end up sort of in harmony, and there's this tearful reconciliation between father and daughter. In the 2023
Uh-huh.
version, Shug literally walks in and sits down next to her dad, and they start playing piano together, and she rests her head on his shoulder, and everything's fine. Okay. Next,
Right.
we've got Celie and Mr.
Next.
Yeah, right. We've got Celie and Mister. Let's look at the 2023 version. After Celie has inherited her father's land and has enough money to open up a pants shop in town, she's very successful. We can tell this by the exaggerated musical song and dance number that precedes it. One night she's getting ready to close up. Mister walks in. He's conciliatory. He tries asking her out on a date. He offers to buy a pair of the ugliest pants in her shop that she can't sell. She sells them to him. He tries to ask her out on a date. In the Spielberg version, he's waiting out there on the street, but he kind of knows that he's screwed up both his life and her life, and he never comes into the shop. And cut to, he keeps getting these letters from Nettie, the estranged sister that he helped to drive a wedge between them as they were little girls, talking about asking for help for Nettie and Celie's natural children to emigrate from Africa to America. He sells part of his land and gets all the papers and everything in order, and arranges for this family reunion at the end of the original Color Purple. It's beautiful. When I watched it again this morning, I teared up. It's such a great moment, and the kids show up. They were raised in Africa, so they don't really speak a lot of English. They need some help communicating with their mother. It's a beautiful scene. Um, In the 2023 version, there's a giant Easter Saturday afternoon lunch, and Mr. is invited. And he shows up wearing these weird, shiny fish scale pants, like he's all big one part of the family, as if to say, yeah, I spent my entire life beating you, raping you. I tore your family apart. I'm a complete monster, but now I'm just one of the gang. And oh, by the way, here's this giant big surprise. And the family shows up, and the reunion is handled in about a minute of screen time before a terrible song and dance number where everyone holds hands, and it reminds me of Jordan Peele's Us for some reason. And then it's over. Uh, I don't know what the thought process was. If they thought we have to be different than Spielberg's version for some reason, but you don't really have to. Don't mess with perfection. If you're going to do anything, just recreate it if you feel you need to, and then let it be.
My initial response to this new version was, how can you mess this up when you got an example right in front of you? If anything, just copy it. I mean, just do everything Spielberg did and you'll probably be okay. Why are you trying to do anything differently? I realize that this film is an example of Oprah can stress her political biases, and that's more important than telling the story well. That's more important than living up to the wonderful legacy of the 1985 The Color Purple. So given the opportunity to take advantage of a past achievement, and also to defy and challenge a white male filmmaker, it was more important to Oprah Winfrey to mess, and at least by messing it all up, at least she got in her points, her misinterest points, and got in her points about about her truth, about women's truth, forgetting the thing that was beautiful in Alice Walker's novel and in Spielberg's film, that the story is all about human truths. You know, also another thing that's different, and I think can be laid at Oprah's feet, is that Alice Walker's novel is what's called an epistolary novel. The structure of the novel is based on letters that the abused young Celie writes to God, and that's missing here. You know, if you ever think about the Oprah Winfrey Show, she doesn't talk about God; she talks about the universe. So not only has she extracted any kind of faith and belief from Alice Walker's story, now these characters who live in a secular universe, and that secular universe has not provided an opportunity for much beauty or wonder. A very kind of cold and ugly film.
The two moments of what I might call artistic, not inspiration, but there was something different. There is the scene where I wanted to call her Fantasia, but Celie imagines. I think it's the first time she meets Shug, and Shug is drunk, and she recovers by taking a bath the next morning. It's when Celie has this fantasy of dancing around on a record player, and Shug is in the bathtub in the center. I thought that was a really cool kind of a set piece. There's also another where the two of them go to see a film in a theater. It's a giant movie palace. They get kind of sucked into this black and white musical fantasy. That's nice. I think that shows not necessarily imagination, because I think I've seen variations on these themes before, but it was just cool to look at. I don't know that it belongs in this movie. It just goes, it's like everything else that's incongruous about this version of The Color Purple. It's not necessary. It's cute, but it's not necessary. My question is to you, and maybe to Oprah if she watches this. Okay, we are 1 year away from the 40th anniversary of Steven Spielberg's The Color Purple. Is it just vanity that Oprah felt that she had to put her stamp on this movie? Because to my mind, you could re-release this for a giant, Warner Brothers 40th anniversary theatrical re-release, and have all of the uplifting, feminist, humanist, racial reckoning, racial consciousness vibes that you want in this movie that's almost 40 years old. There doesn't need to be anything more said about the topics that are brought up. I haven't read the Alice Walker novel, but Spielberg captures all of it. This, whatever is going on in this new version, seems it's almost woke to the point of it's as if Spielberg's version never existed. We're the first ones to get here and plant this flag, and oh, look at our great consciousness. Whereas the people who are admirers of the original version are saying we covered this 4 decades ago.
Right. Well, what I when I mentioned earlier about opportunism, the opportunity here is to follow the current political trend, the current divisive political trend, wherein diversity is the new segregation. Here is an opportunity for Oprah Winfrey to do her part in saying that blacks and whites will never get together, and that the things that white artists have done in the past about black people needs to be negated and redone, whether it's done well or not. I think that is the opportunity. That's the opportunistic part of this remake, and part of the ugliness of this remake, because she can't settle with the legacy of the 1985 Color Purple. She has to go for this diversity, inclusion, equity idea that blacks and whites are different, and black people need to do their own thing, and we should tear down all white statues of white figures of the past, and forget the past. This is a black thing now, which that might be excusable if you can do a good work, but if you can't do a good work, then you've made a horrible mistake, a mistake that does nothing for the culture. It only makes things in the culture worse.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Spielberg may have been, a white Jewish filmmaker, but as we kind of discussed, I think on our last episode, he brought his own kind of cultural perspective to a story that was ostensibly about a different culture than his, but they could reconcile in the middle by both having gone through, you know, the American experience, triumph and tragedy, and finding common ground. And I think you're right. This new version does feel very divisive. I mean, it's curious that they cut out the entire sequence with Sophia and the mayor's wife from the original version. I was shocked that they left that entire scene out, because I think that was one of the few scenes from either version that had like interactions between whites and blacks in it. And I thought, why not continue that opportunity to maybe explore something there or say something? Maybe they did. Maybe that's the statement by axing an entire 15-minute sequence out of the new movie. I don't know. But I just feel like it was a missed opportunity, because watching the 85 sequence again, where the mayor's wife allows Sophia to go spend time with her family on Christmas for an evening, give her the day off, but then immediately rescinds her offer when she feels that she was attacked by all these black folk at the house, and then this causes this wrench, this heartache among all the characters. That's a powerful, poignant moment, and maybe it was too authentic for this new version. That's why they cut it out. I don't know.
What has Oprah Winfrey done? She's left out one moment that can show the true complexity, the true nature of black and white relations in America. She's X'd that out. She's excised it from the story, and that's not helpful. And
No.
And she loses, among many others, the film's great emotional points. You talked before about that moment with the white going to see the black and white film in Movie Palace, and that you had seen things like that before, even though you didn't know why it was happening here. Where could you have seen that before? I feel that I'd seen it before in the great 1981 Herbert Ross film Pennies from Heaven. Did you ever see that, Ian?
No, I don't think I did.
No, Ian, it's a magnificent thing. It's Pennies from Heaven is based on a British TV series by the writer Dennis Potter, and it's a very kind of postmodernist thing where the artifice is made absolutely apparent, and it's a story about a songwriter an American songwriter during the 1930s, during the Depression, and he becomes involved with a murder. But it's also really about the American what's known as the American songbook, about how American songs, especially songs from the Depression era, express the feelings of characters, of human beings living through the Depression, living with hardship, living with frustration, and yet their true feelings are expressed in the popular songs of the day. And the Herbert Ross film is a magnificent thing, because what Herbert Ross does is that he shows us these musical numbers in the style of Hollywood movies of the 30s, but also in the styles of American realist painters of the beginning of the 20th century. People like Edward Hopper, and it's a visually magnificent film, and but it's a film that a lot of people objected to when it opened, because they weren't prepared for that kind of art thing, that kind of postmodern art examination, art exploration, or interrogation, I could say. There's an extraordinary moment in the story in Pennies from Heaven, where Steve Martin, as the songwriter, has an affair with a teacher played by Bernadette Peters. Steve Martin and Bernadette Peters imagined themselves on screen as Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. And so when we get the scene in this Color Purple, where Fantasia and Taraji P. Henson imagine themselves as figures in a black and white 30s Hollywood musical, it's like, why is Oprah Winfrey ripping off Pennies from Heaven when she hasn't laid the groundwork for a postmodern examination of American culture? And the film falls apart at that point. It was already in shambles. then for me, it completely falls apart at that point. It falls apart for an interesting reason too. Are we meant to believe that in the Jim Crow, that these two black women could go to a movie palace and comfortably watch a Hollywood movie? Is that possible? The idea that in reality, Black Americans did go to Hollywood movies and did project their own feelings onto them. This is one of the wonderful things about American culture. That's true. But in historical terms, and I will use historical terms here because Oprah Winfrey is trying to cultural history. Why are they going to a Hollywood movie? Wouldn't it be more interesting had they gone to see a race movie of the mid-20th century, of the Jim Crow era, and somehow reenacted and projected themselves onto that? That's what Oprah Winfrey could have done had she not had an axe to grind, had her Bazawule director had any sense of what American culture was actually like. They have none. So we have this oddball scene where Fantasia and Taraji P. Henson dance on top of a gigantic phonograph record, which violates the sensationalism that has gone on in the movie before. And not only that, how do I say this? It makes the homosexual relationship between Celie and Suge more obvious than it ever needed to be. What can't go without being said is that one of the fascinations of Spielberg's 1985 movie is that it was the first big budget Hollywood movie to include a lesbian relationship. And the film was controversial when it came out in 85, but it wasn't controversial about that. It was controversial about the idea of domestic violence. It wasn't controversial about a homosexual affair between two women, because Spielberg had conveyed the humanity of the so convincingly that everybody accepted it. Everybody accepted it without comment or complaint. Whereas all these years later, Oprah Winfrey just puts it in our face or down our throats, stuffs it down our throats, and the obviousness of it is what's offensive. She doesn't allow us to respond to the emotions between Celie and Suge in a way that makes us respect their humanity or respect their erotic attraction to each other. talk about things that are left out of this version is what, if I could limit the Spielberg movie to one moment, that's hard to do. There's so many great ones, especially that separation scene between the sisters, which comes right
Oh,
out of D.W.'s Orphans of the Storm. But if I could one absolutely great moment in Spielberg's The Color Purple, it's the reading of the letters between Celie and Shug, which I think is just is one of the most moving and beautifully acted moments in American movie history. I challenge Marlon Brando and Rod Steiger in the back of the cab and on the waterfront. I challenge if that's any better than the reading of the letters in The Color Purple. When when I think about that moment, when where Mister has hidden all the letters that Sister Nettie has sent to Celie over the years, Mister's taken those letters and hidden them, and then Shug helps Celie find them, and they collect all the letters. They put them all out on the bed, and the greatest moment of Whoopi Goldberg's career, I will say, is when Celie looks at the letters and says, "It's so many, what we go do," which is just so beautiful. And who can't respond to that? That makes us relate to the characters, makes us love them. Wonderful moment.
well,
Nothing like that in this new version.
well, yeah, and going back and watching that again earlier today, it struck me how different the presentation of it is. In
Mhm.
the Spielberg version, they have to dig to find these letters. They
Right,
are in a chest, mixed in with money, nudie pictures, sealed underneath a compartment, underneath the floorboards, underneath a box, underneath a chest in this closet. They have to dig to find it.
right.
In the 2023 version, they're in a box in Mister's closet. Now, I'm just thinking thematically what that means, that he buried all of these things deep, deep down because that's the biggest threat to his hold over her is her family and the love that she feels for her sister. In this one, it's just like, well, she could have found these at any point, just rummaging through the closet. It's the same thing with the famous shaving scene. In
Right.
this new version, there's this really intense, almost horror movie music as Celia is, slashing the razor across the strop, and then she goes and it's over within about 20 seconds. Where Mister is like, "You better not cut me," and she almost gets a stroke in, and then someone, I think it might be Sugar, someone comes up the road and he slaps the razor out of her hand. Compare that with what Spielberg did with this elaborate 3 or 5 minute sequence. I believe this was connected to the letters because they were showing these two boys, I think, in Africa going through a rite of passage involving, one of them being slashed across the cheek with a razor blade at the same time Whoopi Goldberg is going to work on Danny Glover with the razor. You don't know what is going to happen. There's this great, building tribal music and tension and this constant flashing back and forth that says so much about the characters and heritage and violence that, yeah, it's just completely gone from this new version. And I'm just left to scratch my head. I don't know if the people who are praising this new version, if they're the types of people who are like, I'm not going to go back and watch something that's 40 years old. It's an old movie. This was made for my generation. It said so in the commercial. But
Right.
whatever it is, it's cultural vandalism.
Sure. You know, I think the media institutions that are praising this new version were the same media institutions that condemned the '85 version. Uh, Wrong again. And 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 did we not say that the 1985 The Color Purple is great cinema and and just fully illustrates why Steven Spielberg was a great artist, because that shaving sequence that you mentioned, uh, the essence of that sequence, part of what's so wonderful about it, that Spielberg, being a part of the American Renaissance, being one of those movie directors, he learned from D.W. Griffith, and he uses Griffith's cross-cutting technique, cutting from Georgia to Africa, from a woman about to shave the man who's abused her, to her children going through a tribal scarification ritual. Spielberg uses Griffith's editing technique to bring those two cultures, those two experiences together. The movie just gets richer and richer as you watch it because he is a great visual filmmaker. He does everything through the image. We learn about tribalism. We learn about the dynamic tension between men and women who don't get along. We learn all of that visually. If I'm not mistaken, that entire sequence that you mentioned happens without dialogue. It's all through sound.
Yeah.
And without singing either. It's absolutely pure cinema. And but now we've got Bazawule's Ineptitude, we've got Oprah Winfrey's opportunism, and they deny us the kinds of beauty that Steven Spielberg was able to bring to the screen because he wasn't afraid to show how he, as a white Jewish American, could relate to Black American culture.
Well, let's switch gears to talk about another one of Steven Spielberg's contemporaries, and that's George Lucas. Because a lot of people have been comparing the new Zack Snyder movie, Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire, to Star Wars.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you again, because I think Oprah needs to stay away from this movie. I don't want her to watch Rebel Moon because she might get an idea of like, hey, we need to make a black feminist Rebel Moon, and we don't need that. I can't even imagine what that would look like. But okay, so
well taken.
Yes. All right. Well,
wait a minute. Well taken, but now I have to throw in another shot at Oprah.
Oh no.
For all my problems with Oprah Winfrey, she made Beloved. I think Jonathan Demme's Beloved is really among the greatest films that have ever been made. And in her promotion of this wretched remake of The Color Purple, she acts as if the film Beloved was never made. And I would like to, after having bashed her so much in this podcast, I would like to kindly remind Oprah Winfrey, you made a great work of art. And even though it landed with a thud at the box office, you need to remind people of how complex, how moving, how extraordinary Beloved is. You didn't need to waste time and money remaking The Color Purple, which is fine as it was. You need to remind people that Beloved is the high point of your career as an actress and film producer. That's what she needs to do. She needs to take this Color Purple back and bury it somewhere. She needs to get some pride about Beloved and let people know that they slept on a great movie.
Well, I think we planted the seeds for one of our next conversations, Armand, because as I think we've established, I've never seen Beloved. It's a blind spot, but so I'd like to watch that and talk to you about it.
Anytime.
Maybe she's holding out because she's working on the Beloved musical. Have you thought about that?
Oh Lord, don't say it. She might actually do it. No, the Beloved needs nothing else except to be re-released on a big screen.
Fair enough. Well, let's leave it there. Armond White, again, thank you for hanging out and talking movies. And thank you for your patience through all of our myriad technical difficulties. Folks out there, you're seeing a fraction of what we had to go through to get this out to you.
Well, I appreciate your invitation and your patience.
All right. Well, folks, I'm going to link all of the National Review pieces that we've discussed. Armand's Better Than piece, his reviews of Color Purple, and also Rebel Moon down below. Check them out for sure. And anything else you want to promote, Armand, before we go?
At the moment, just those pieces and Make Spielberg Great Again, the book.
Wait. You mean this book? Yeah, available at fine retailers everywhere. Also, just also another plug, because Warner Brothers needs the money. They put out The Color Purple on 4K, which this is where I got the digital copy to watch that I was doing my homework back and forth. And so yeah, if you were going to take your family to go see The Color Purple, invest that money instead in buying the home video version of Color Purple or renting it or whatever and watching a true, I think, American classic masterpiece by Steven Spielberg. This new version, it's going to be a footnote in history. 10 years from now, when people talk about The Color Purple, much like with West Side Story, which we discussed like last year,
Right.
These are footnotes. These remakes are footnotes, and that's it. That's all they are.
But
Armond, thank you again. And yeah, we'll talk soon about something, but I just also want to wish you a Happy New Year, sir.
Happy New Year to you as well, Ian. And thank you.
All right. Catch you later, man. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.